Selton, well, it's a pleasure to have you here. You can join us on X Spaces as well, on YouTube, on Facebook, and of course on myjoyonline.com. Now let's settle for the details now. The governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Johnson Esiama, has announced that a value for money audit will be conducted on the new Bank of Ghana office complex once the newly appointed board of directors is sworn in. He explained that the decision to construct a new head office stemmed from structural deficiencies in the old building, revealing that the initial cost of the project was pegged at $88 million, but after a redesign, the cost was reassessed at $228 million. However, due to further adjustments, the total project cost has now risen to $261.8 million. Dr. Siama further explained that as of February ending, $230 million has already been paid to the contractor. Dr. Siama made these remarks when he appeared before Parliament to address questions regarding the new Bank of Ghana headquarters. Here are some of the things he told MPs at a closed session.
In 2019, under a new board of the Bank of Ghana, a structural integrity audit was conducted, and this showed that the existing head office, which was built in the late 1950s, had developed significant structural defects and was no longer fit for purpose. Mr. Speaker, the project was initially valued by the PPA at $81.8 million, but later increased to $121.1 million after the Bank of Ghana requested for re-evaluation. This was revised again to $222.8 million, and I'm just rounding off, Mr. Speaker, after the redesign and inclusion of building management systems. Mr. Speaker, there were also statutory requirements, security needs, and sustainability considerations. As a result, the total project cost increased to $261.8 million. Mr. Speaker, as of February this year, a total of $230 million approximately has been paid towards the project, with an outstanding balance of $31.8 million to be paid to the contractor. Mr. Speaker, a total of $48.3 million has been paid in taxes and levies that were related to the construction. Mr. Speaker, beyond the core building, separate contracts were awarded for other infrastructure. These include ICT systems and network infrastructure, which was awarded at a cost of $8.6 million, integrated electronic security systems, which was also awarded at a cost of $15.8 million, and furniture and furnishings that was also awarded at $11.1 million. Mr. Speaker, these elements were included to ensure that the bank operates in a secure and technologically advanced environment in line with the needs of a modern central bank. Mr. Speaker, while the new headquarters project has understandably drawn public attention, Mr. Speaker, it is important to emphasize that the Bank of Ghana remains fully focused on its primary responsibilities, which is to maintain price stability, which is to ensure financial sector resilience, and which is to foster economic growth.
So that's the governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Siama. Now, they've taken some measures. One of them is to allow the AESL, that's the Architectural Engineering Services Limited, a government agency, to undertake a value for money audits, and then they will come back to Parliament to inform them whether the amount of money spent met the value of the project, and that will wait to hear from them. There were questions from both sides of the House as to whether some, negative dealing had gone on, but for what we've been told so far, everything went on course, yet to be valued and audited by the AESL, and that is what the governor left Parliament with, that he will back to the House to update them on the way forward regarding the new headquarters of the Bank of Ghana. That's where he is now residing and using as the office as governor of the Bank of Ghana. Now, this took place in Parliament at a committee of the whole session for the first time, allowed cameras inside. Now, let me take you back to Parliament before we go into the outcome of the National Economic Dialogue, because on the House, on the floor this afternoon, is members of Parliament debating the State of the Nation address presented by President John Dramani Mahama. Let's take a listen to what is happening on the floor now and then come back to deal with the issues of the National Economic Dialogue.
It's a point of order taken against a point of order. Somebody is on the floor on a point of order. Then you also want to take a point of order against such a person. Assuming the member is on the floor from the majority side and made a statement, and the honorable former minister is on the feet, I will recognize him for a point of order. But when there is a point of order and you are on your feet for a point of order against point of order, please.
Respect. Speaker, let's not litigate further on this matter.
Yes.
We will not.
Yes.
But Speaker, you did not even listen to him. Whether he was coming on a point of order or point of information, you did not grant him that audience. So you wouldn't have known if he was coming on the point of order or not. But be that as it may, if you grant him some minutes as a former sector minister, fine. If not, we can proceed.
Honorable Kabiru, let's proceed. You have 3 more minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was on the point that the intervention by Mr. President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo in respect of the money we borrowed had touched every single life in this chamber. As a matter of fact, the people of Adaklo has a 5,000-seater stadium due to our taxes and the money borrowed. The people of Ketu North has a district hospital at Weta. These are the impacts of the money borrowed. And I can go on and go. We have Astrotech in the Volta region, all in the Volta region. We have 55 projects all in the Volta region due to the money that Nana Akufo-Addo has raised and spent. So for honorable members to come and say that money has been borrowed for no work is quite rich. Mr. Speaker, my expectation of the president was an opportunity for him to address the state of the nation out there. But he told us in this house that he could not give us the true state of the nation address. And he even stated on page 6 of his address that, Mr. Speaker, I'm not able to, and I'll quote Mr. President, he said, nothing could prepare anyone for the reality of the depth of which our economy and government has sunk. It means that he wasn't prepared for the work given to him. This is his whole work. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President has touched the hope of investors.
Remember, that is your interpretation.
Mr. Speaker, the text, I'm quoting him. Mr. Speaker, I'm quoting him. And I'm quoting for the purpose of emphasis and that. He said, nothing could prepare anyone for the reality of the depth of which our economy and government has sunk. Anyone, including Mr. President. So I'm quoting him. Those are his own words. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President has touched the hope of Ghanaian youth and the investor community. Mr. President has painted a gloomy picture about the economy which he cannot recover. Mr. President has misrepresented data to create a gloomy picture. Mr. President has not given the true state of the nation of the year. He has given a state of lamentation. Mr. President has not given the true state of the nation. He has given a state of
lame. Member, conclude.
Mr. President has given a state of lame duck. Mr. President has given a state of confusion. Mr. Speaker, the State of the Nation address was what was presented by the Venerable Member of Parliament for Karga, Dr. Amin Anta, and the minority members of this Parliament for that matter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
It's now the turn of Honorable James Agalga.
Listening to my colleagues from the other side debate, I am very shocked. Yesterday, one of my colleagues from the other side described President Mahama as Terminator number 1. And in his view, he's Terminator number 1 because his chief of staff has issued a directive to the effect that all public sector workers recruited or employed after the 7th of December be relieved of their duties. But, Mr. Speaker, clearly there was an agreement as part of the transitional arrangements. And I'm happy to note that the majority leader was part of the transitional team, that there would be no public sector recruitment after the 7th of December. It was agreed between the government, the outgoing government, and the incoming government at the time. But, Mr. Speaker, I find it most strange that those who benefited from the colossal dismissal of public sector workers in 2017 are the ones who are now crying wolf. Mr. Speaker, I have in my hands a publication by Ghana Web dated Tuesday, 23rd May 2017, headed as follows: Akufo-Addo sacks 13,000 public sector workers. Mr. Speaker, with your leave, I read, in what has been described as reenactment of the dismissal of some 568 selected public servants by their four-bear government of Prime Minister Kofi Abrefa-Buzia, President Akufo-Addo has, in the last 5 months, sacked a staggering 13,000 public sector workers. The dismissed public servants, most of who were hired during the 8-year rule of the National Democratic Congress administration, have been shown the exit in fulfillment of the NPP's government's policy to dispense with the services of government workers suspected of being sympathizers of the NDC and were employed under the Mahama administration. Unquote. Mr. Speaker, I have a personal experience to share. When I served as Deputy Minister of the Interior, 6 months to the elections, we secured financial clearance from the Ministry of Finance to recruit personnel into the security agencies, namely the police, fire service, and prisons. We went through all the procedures, including putting out an advertisement. Applications were made, unlike what we saw recently when the argument made by the former Interior Minister was that he was recruiting from a non-existent backlog. We caused an advert to be made. Applications were put in, they were received, examinations written, and qualified candidates were selected for training. In 2017, Mr. Speaker, the Akufo-Addo government after 4 months of training in the various training depots, actually dismissed recruits who had been trained in weapon handling. Most of the training modules they had gone through, including weapon handling, they were not afraid to dismiss them. Please, I was deputy minister. I challenge you to controvert the fact that I'm putting out there. So these are the people now crying wolf. We have been modest. All the chief of staff sought to do was to say there was a breach of the transitional arrangements to not recruit. After 7th December, after the elections, you knew you were leaving office. Why did you decide to recruit after you knew you had lost power? You had agreed that you will not take part in any recruitment processes after 7th December. And so what the chief of staff simply did was to apply the rule in the wake of the breach. So please, if you can describe President Mahama as Terminator number 1, I'm asking you, how should we describe President Akufo-Addo? Maybe Terminator half or Terminator quarter. So please refrain from these antics of yours. It is not in your best interest. The other day, Mr. Speaker, I listened to one of my colleagues, the honorable member for Menchia South, with bated breath. He created the impression that the Attorney General, Dominic Ayene, had abused his power to enter nolle prosequi in respect of some of the cases he inherited from Godfrey Dame and Gloria Kufu. And his argument was that an Attorney General cannot enter nolle prosequi without the prior authorization of the President, the appointing authority. Honorable Daku made those submissions in this House, and I took notes copiously. Mr. Speaker, with the greatest of respect, I want to draw my learned friend's attention to the fact that the power to enter nolle prosequi is provided for under Section 54 of the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Act 30. And in it, the Attorney General does not require the authorization of the President to enter nolle prosequi. So what Honorable Dominic Ayene did in respect of some of the cases he has so far withdrawn or entered nolle prosequi is in tandem with law. It is in tandem with Article 88 of the Constitution, which confers the prosecutorial powers of the state.
Honorable James Agaga, just resume your seat. Yes, Honorable Dako.
Mr. Speaker, with respect, I think my learned colleague mentioned Menchia South and then added Dako. Please, Menchia South is Honorable Nana Bafweji. John Dako is Swami. So please, let the answer reflect that. And in any case,
very well.
He never said what you said regarding the nolle prosequi. He never said.
Honorable Yondako, I agree on the first part, but the second part I disagree because I have the cause sitting down there to draw the Deputy Whip Ahmed Jerry's attention to the fact that Attorney General doesn't need approval from the President to be able to enter a nolle prosequi. And he is there and can bear me out because I have listened to the honorable member.
Speaker, my colleague is a senior member of the House. Speaker, whilst you were addressing us, he was on his feet. He must respect the chair. You must respect the chair.
Honorable James Agarga, you have the floor.
And so, Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate the honorable member for Menchia South is not here. I know he's a lawyer of repute, but it's important that he goes back and refresh his memory on his criminal procedure law so that next time he doesn't mislead this House in that manner. So far, the Attorney General has shown a lot of magnanimity, Mr. Speaker. In almost all the cases...
Honourable member, conclude.
Oh. Mr. Speaker, To conclude, let me touch on the security sector a bit. The president made a statement that he would employ diplomacy, counterintelligence to deal with violent extremism and terrorism. Mr. Speaker, as part of the diplomatic effort, the president has already reached out to neighboring countries such as Burkina Faso, which pulled out of the Accra initiative after President Akufo-Addo engaged in a major diplomatic gaffe by reporting to Anthony Blinken, the foreign secretary, or if you like, the equivalent of the foreign minister in the United States at the time, about Burkina Faso, a neighboring country, that they had brought in mercenaries to help them fight terrorism. President Mahama has taken it upon himself to fix the mess, that diplomatic mess that was created by Akufo-Addo in our quest to protect our country from violent extremism.
Honourable Member, your time is up. I proceed to give the floor to Samuel Abu Jinapo.
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker. When I was Speaker on the 27th of February 2025, the President came to this House to fulfill his constitutional obligation of giving the message of the state of the nation. But Mr. Speaker, I believe that this House almost unanimously have now agreed that that statement was indeed a message of lamentation. And I think all of us are agreeable on that. Mr. Speaker, but in spite of that, in spite of the impression the President wanted to give to the country, data and facts are sacrosanct, and the data and the facts confirm clearly, Mr. Speaker, that the state of our national economy, which was bequeathed to President Mahama, which nobody can dispute indeed, is that we had a higher economic growth than our friends from the other side, that we had a higher per capita income than our friends. Agricultural sector, we grew better. Industrial sector, we grew better. We created more jobs than they created in their 8 years in office. Lower fiscal deficits. A primary balance is lower than our friends from the other side. And it goes on and on and on. But Mr. Speaker, let me address one very important matter, which is the question of the size of government. And indeed, the President, when he addressed this House, made the claim that he had formed the leanest and most effective government in the history of our country. Mr. Speaker, I want to submit that you can have 10 ministers, another government can have 20 ministers, and the government that has 20 ministers may have a smaller government machinery, a smaller government size than you who have 10 ministers. And I want to demonstrate that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's on record. The record is that the pegging or ranking of officials of the presidency are as follows, Mr. Speaker, since the inception of the fourth Republican dispensation. The Chief of Staff is pegged at the rank below the Speaker of Parliament, but above a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, a senior presidential advisor is pegged at the level of a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of Parliament. So a senior presidential advisor, by all intents and purposes, their salaries, emolument, conditions of service, is equivalent to a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, a presidential advisor is pegged at the level of a cabinet minister who is not a member of Parliament. A presidential staffer is pegged at the level of a non-cabinet minister who is not a member of Parliament. And a presidential aide is pegged at the level of a deputy minister. These are the rankings since the inception of the fourth Republican dispensation. Mr. Speaker, so if you want to see the size of government and its bearing on the national exchequer, Mr. Speaker, don't just look at ministers and deputy ministers. Look at the government holistically. And Mr. Speaker, I want to submit that if you look at this government holistically, there are ministers, deputy ministers, senior presidential advisors, presidential staffers, presidential aides. President Mahama has formed arguably one of the biggest or largest governments in the history of our country as it relates to the cost on the national exchequer. Mr. Speaker, why do I say this? Take, for example, the President has appointed Dr. Valerie Sawyer as senior presidential advisor in charge of government affairs. Her rank is a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of Parliament. So her salary, her emolument, conditions of service, everything to do with her office is at the same rank as a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of Parliament. That's because he's appointed a presidential advisor on economy. appointed Presidential Advisor for 24-hour economy, Presidential Advisor in Special Aid to the President, Presidential Advisor on National Anti-Corruption Program, Presidential Advisor on Diaspora Affairs. Mr. Speaker, he goes on to appoint Presidential Advisor, Presidential Staffer, and Special Aid to the Vice President, Presidential Staffer for Black Star Experience, and then Presidential Staffer for Diaspora Affairs. Mr. Speaker, then he goes ahead to appoint 5 policy advisors to the Vice President. Mr. Speaker, he tells the country that he's appointed a minister in charge of agribusiness, and yet he's appointed director at the presidency in charge of agriculture and agribusiness. My good friend Peter Buama Otukono. Mr. Speaker, he says he will not appoint deputy regional ministers, and he appoints 16 presidential staffers in charge of the 16 regions of our country. Mr. Speaker, I want to submit that these presidential staffers in charge of the 16 regions of our country, in essence, as it relates to the cost on the national exchequer, are in fact, indeed, and in substance, deputy ministers of state. Mr. Speaker, he then appoints, Mr. Speaker, listen carefully, please. Mr. Speaker, he then appoints one presidential. Two communication specialists, 5 technical communication assistants, 1 media aide, 1 assistant media liaison officer, 1 communications consultant. I've done the mathematics, and I want to submit. I've done the mathematics that I want to submit, and I do this not from a partisan lens, but I do this as somebody who had the privilege and honor to serve as Deputy Chief of Staff. I know how it works. In terms of the cost on the national exchequer, the President has appointed 100 ministers and deputy ministers. The President has established a Ministry of Youth Development. I want to refer the House, and my good friend, Honorable, I will tender all of this, Mr. Speaker. I will tender this. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable James Agalga, my very good friend, has talked about how the MPP government terminated some appointments. Mr. Speaker, assuming without admitting that that even happened, shouldn't our governance move forward? Shouldn't we have good governance? And indeed, when we promise resetting, what does that mean? But Mr. Speaker, more importantly, may I refer the House, Mr. Speaker, may I refer the House to Article 191 of our national constitution, which states, and I quote, "A member of the public services shall not be dismissed or removed from office or reduced in rank or otherwise punished without just cause," end quote. Mr. Speaker, we are building a nation, and there are hundreds and thousands of people out there who have lost their jobs. I think our friends from the other side, the Honorable James Agaga, should join us to appeal to the President, just as he took an oath, Mr. Speaker, on the 2nd schedule of our national constitution, where he said, and I quote, "to protect and defend the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana," end quote. Article 191 is a provision of the Constitution of Ghana, and the President is enjoined to indeed defend and protect this provision of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the President, in the same schedule, swore an oath to do justice to all manner of persons. Some of these people whose appointments have been terminated, some are NDC members, Mr. Speaker. Some are MPP members. Some are non-partisan. Some don't even know what happens in politics. And yet, a president who says he'll be father for all has terminated the appointment. When President Mahama was leaving office, Mr. Speaker, he appointed Mr. Joseph Witter as the Commissioner for Shrine. He appointed Joseph Nkrumah as Chairman of NCCE. On 23rd December 2016, he appointed Daniel Domevilo as Auditor General. Mr. Speaker, it is not Abu Jinapor, or it is not the minority, Mr. Speaker, who is giving the president names. No, Mr. Speaker, when you go out there on the street, it's the Ghanaian youth who are talking about that. That the president promised to create jobs, and yet he's come and the talk on the street is that Mahama Bako terminations. And that is why they have named him. We haven't named him. The minority hasn't named him. They have named him Terminator number 1. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we call on the president to rise up to the occasion to jettison the promises, and Mr. Speaker, and honor his commitment of providing you for the Ghanaian people. What we heard on 27th was a message of lamentations and not a State of the Nation address. Mr. Speaker, thank you for the attention.
Honourable members, it's now the turn of Honourable Dr. Godfred Seidu.
Right, so we've been watching the members of Parliament debate the presentation of the State of the Nation address by President John Mahama. This is custom with Parliament. After the presentation, MPs are given the opportunity to debate the content of the document, and that's what they'll be doing until they convey their thanks to the President at the end of the debate. That will be summed up by the minority and majority leaders. But let's come back to the studio right now and deal with other matter. We'll take you back to Parliament when there's a need for us to do so. But remember that after just 2 days of intense discussions and strategy deliberation among the country's top economists and key stakeholders, the National Economic Dialogue concluded with 30 decisive interventions across 6 critical areas to reset the economy. The Mahama-led administration has pledged to implement these measures to stabilize the economy and steer the country back towards growth. Now, we will delve deeper into what these recommendations mean for the economic reset. First, there are excerpts of what Ishmael Yamson and the Vice President, Professor Jane Nano Pokwajman, have been saying about the country's economic recovery.
Comprehensive report of the National Economic Dialogue will be submitted to the Presidency for consideration and implementation, which to call on government to 1. Prioritize efforts to restore macroeconomic stability and regain confidence in the economy by enhancing coordination between fiscal and monetary policy operations and achieve alignment, reviewing the foreign exchange retention regime to support economic stability, implementing major tax reforms that expand the tax net, including property taxes, revise VAT rates, and address revenue leakages, overhauling and ensuring compliance with the Public Finance Management Act, 2016 Act 921, and reform the Fiscal Responsibility Act, 2018 982. Reforming state-owned enterprises and enforcing transparent financial reporting and good corporate governance practices. Strengthening expenditure controls in public agencies and resource internal audit regime to be effective, and establishing a credible medium-term expenditure framework that ensures adequate provision of funding for projects before commencement. 2. Aggressively pursue inclusive and sustainable growth for economic transformation. Accordingly, we encourage government to establish new agricultural institutes and enhance existing ones to foster expertise, drive innovation, and stimulate interest in industrialized agricultural production. 3. Promote private sector-led growth to unlock the full potential of businesses. 4. Innovatively address the infrastructure deficit to advance transformation. 5. Implement structural and policy reforms, especially in key sectors for growth.
It has been clear from the dialogue that the journey ahead will require a strategic reset grounded in restoring stability and fostering growth and benefits for every Ghanaian. Our focus the 2 days has been addressing key drivers for national development. The dialogue has underscored the urgency of restoring confidence in our economy by maintaining macroeconomic stability, steadying inflation, strengthening our currency, and creating fiscal policies to support long-term sustainable growth, and of course also to align our policies with fiscal discipline and sound economic management. We recognize that growth must be broad-based, it must be deep. It should cut both vertically and horizontally. We must move away from over-reliance on a few sectors in order to enhance our competitiveness at all levels. The importance of improving productivity, embracing technology, and prioritizing human well-being through inclusive economic growth cannot be lost on any one of us. Infrastructure development as a stimulant to economic growth is pivotal. Modernizing our transport, energy, and communication systems remain important to make sure that infrastructure investments also align with long-term development growth goals. The benefits of such actions are improved connectivity, reduced costs, and unlocking new opportunities for businesses and communities across the country. In all of this, we must ensure that the structural and policy reforms support a more resilient and competitive economy, especially in key areas or key sectors such as agriculture, education, healthcare, social welfare, and others. Our commitment is to continuously review and adapt our policies to meet the needs of a changing global economy.
Right, so the talk is over, but let's break it down. Lead data analyst here at Joy News Research Desk, Isaac Kofi joins me in the studio as we break down the issues. So Kofi, what do we have?
Well, so Elton, we have a new economic Bible, and then I'll run you through the economic Bible. We don't have the full Bible yet, okay, but definitely we have a summary of what we are supposed to expect in the full report by the National Economic Dialogue team. And they made a number of recommendations. What we have done is to painstakingly go through all of them and bring you the top 10 recommendations made by the team. Now, first one has to do with macroeconomic policy reforms and operations. Why is this important? We understand that the country operates on both micro and macro, but usually it is the macro side that brings the country big problems and always force the country to go to the IMF, go and borrow big monies and all of you. So if you're talking about macroeconomic indicators or fiscal and monetary policy reforms, then we are talking about inflation targeting, unemployment rate, you're talking about GDP growth rate and all of that. Fiscal side is also important because we know once government wants to deal with a problem, they possibly will start with both sides, whether it is monetary or fiscal policy. Right. You need to make sure that the two of them marry well so that you have a good outcome. Next one has to do with the foreign exchange retention regime. Why is this important? We all know that the slightest change in the dollar causes the cedi to fall significantly. Right. And so if you are having such dialogues and you are preferring solutions, definitely you cannot go without talking about a regime that will retain foreign exchange in the country. In fact, for instance, if you look at the gold sector, for instance, mining sector, last year we understand that close about, $11 billion of gold was exported out of the country. And just about 2 billion was actually surrendered to the Bank of Ghana. So in essence, just 2 billion stayed in the country. The rest went away. The rest actually went away. So when you're talking about retention, these are some of the aspects that you are looking at, remittances and all of you. Those issues are very important and you need to take a look at that. Once you're able to retain a significant component, the cedi will take respite in your reserve that you have. Now, I mean, tax reforms, very important.
Absolutely. Very much so.
Yeah, what are we talking about? We're talking about property taxes and reviewing VAT rates. If you go to the tax revenue, it is VAT that holds the biggest chunk of the tax revenue every year. But we also know that there are certain problems with the VAT calculation. For instance, if you go to a shop right now and you buy an item, there are three tax handles, the COVID-19, like the NHI and others, that will be added to the value of the commodity before VAT is even applied. That has been problematic over the years, and reform should take a look at that. Property taxes, we know, and there's been estimations that if government is able to use these means, we possibly will have a lot of revenues, monies coming into the nation's revenue kitty. Overhaul of the PFM system, definitely talking about the public sector, expenditure and all of that. I mean, SOEs also featured heavily. We've been talking about SOEs almost the whole time, and I mean, SOEs and enforcing them, I mean, ensuring transparency and all of that. We are privileged to actually have SIGA release their report this time around in time. We currently have the 2023
This afternoon, for example, I was reading the financial report of the Ghana Commercial Bank, and it looks like they did very well.
Exactly.
In the year
BOS is also doing very well. Some of them are doing well, but the finance minister says that
most of them,
per where he is standing, most of them are actually in the reds.
And yesterday, for example, I was telling somebody that it looks like if there's an SOE that has taken so much beating under this government, it has to be
ECG and maybe Cocoa Board. The two are actually twins when we talk about SOEs. It's because they make significant losses. And if you look at the SOE's debt, which is currently around 216 billion Ghana cedis, ECG and Cocoa Board, they actually hold a significant component of that. In fact, if you are ranking, it's ECG number 1, Cocoa Board number 2. So definitely you cannot talk about SOE's reform without talking about the two of them. And in fact, they also speak about expenditure controls in the public agencies and resource internal audit regimes. I mean, public sector agencies and expenditure really important. We had, Abu Jinapor talking about the number of people, appointees. Exactly. We know that the number of ministries have been reduced significantly.
And the number of ministers reduced. But we've also seen a lot of employment that have been granted some individuals.
I mean, some of them are actually novel, right? We've not heard from about them before. Some of the appointment Mahama has actually made.
Minister of State for all the 16 regions.
That's interesting. Right. All of this also an important issue. Now, number 7 talks about comprehensive review, and you made mention, I mean, now I was trying to say that maybe today we'll not talk about ECG, but that's featured heavily. Why? Because ECG is important. If you are looking at an SOE, that its debt alone, debt and liabilities alone, according to the president, is hovering around 50 billion Ghana cedis. That's about $4.2 billion.
Yes. And
we are talking about the same SOE owing IPPs and all of that. In fact, if you're talking about the cash waterfall mechanism, is the most important SOE in the cash waterfall mechanism. And the reason why you need to talk about that, we've been talking about privatization and all of that. Illegal mining also.
And even on the and I've also, I don't know whether it's part of the recommendation, but there's also the talk that entities like VRA, the assets must be sold.
Yeah, exactly. Liquidation of some of their assets. Because, I mean, the team was actually looking at, the structural team was looking at the fact that the legacy debt in the energy sector is now hovering around, I think some $2.2 billion to the IPPs. And they were estimating that if nothing is done about the legacy debt in the energy sector, it could hit some 9.5 billion Ghana cedis. Now, this for me is alarming, and why possibly they speak about some of the SOEs, especially the energy sector. Why this is important is because if you look at the SOEs, for instance, their total debt is around 216 billion Ghana cedis. But the energy sector SOEs account for more than 60% of that debt. So definitely, if you are mentioning ECG, BoG, VRA, which actually holds or controls a significant part of our thermal and hydro generation, then you should speak about them as well. Number 8, definitely we'll talk about Galamsey. You cannot take Galamsey out of this equation. And the team wanted eliminated.
Absolutely.
They want it
Everybody
gone.
is in support of this.
Yeah, but this will be a Herculean task.
Of course, even under even under this administration, from the report that came through from Erastus Haridonko, because he's a member of the fact-finding committee put together by the Lancet. And then a constituency chairman of the NDC is asking why he was not informed of their coming.
Confronting security,
exactly.
personnel. That I mean, it's important how they were able to marry illegal mining and cocoa, because these two now go hand in hand. If you have more illegal mining, you definitely will have less from cocoa beans. If you have less from cocoa beans, your export values will drop. And then you talk about cocoa board. I mean, this is cocoa board. I mean, if you look at their turnaround strategy that they've presented to the IMF, I still don't see a clear path to proper recovery in terms of cocoa board, because at the moment, cocoa board for me is at risk. The reason why I say so is that cocoa beans or cocoa is actually the mainstay of the Ghanaian economy.
Yes.
It is the only foreign exchange earner that we can beat our chest and say that we get more than 90% of whatever we export. But if cocoa board doesn't function well, we possibly will not get more from cocoa export. And the last one for me has to do with public sector remunerations and productivity. We know the government statistician spoke about this some time ago, and he received some sort of lambasting from public sector and all of that. But the team is recommending that. I mean, we've spoken about the 10% increment in increase in wage, wage, and also base pay. But they are saying that public sector remuneration should be, tied to productivity and accountability. Why this is important is that this year it is estimated that government compensation of employees will hover. If you look at the figures, around 73 billion Ghana cedis, and that's more than 35% of the expected revenue and more than 50% of tax revenue, and why that is also important. So these are some of the top recommendations that we have been coming through the report.
Thank you so much, Kofi. And of course, Dr. George Domfe, he's an economist. Professor John Gachi is a professor of finance at the University of Cape Coast, one of the organizers of the National Economic Forum, of course. Also joining us, Professor William Kwesi Pripra from the Andrews University in the United States of America. Professors, good afternoon and welcome to the Pulse. So let me start with you, Dr. Great to have you. And Professor Pripra, it's still morning, so let me say good morning to you in the United States of America. And let me start with Dr. George Domfe. So, Doctor, you've heard the recommendations, and I'm sure that you also followed the discussions in the last 2 days. Let me first pick your sum up of what happened in the last 2 days and whether or not the recommendations are what we need to reset our economy. And if you can unmute for me, Dr. Domfe.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Please go on.
Okay. Good afternoon, and let me thank you for giving me this opportunity. And let me also say very good afternoon to my co-panelists.
Right.
Yes, so I have followed the events, and I must say a very, very important exercise. It is always said that he who fails to plan plans to fail. And so it is important that as a nation or as an individual, sometimes you look back to what you did yesterday, the results of it that brought you to where you are today, in order to make projections into the future. And so it is very good that as a new government with the new vision that we try to put such resourceful individuals together to plan where we should go. And I have followed, and I think it's been very, very insightful. It's been very, very fruitful. But my worry, and if you give me just 1 minute to talk about that.
Yes, go on.
My worry, can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yeah, my worry has been the fact that Ghana, we love planning, talk shop. Because somewhere December 2023, I was invited by National Commission for National Development Planning Commission, NDPC.
Right.
And we all know they are responsible for the planning. some time ago, it used to be Ministry for Finance and Economic Planning. And now the planning aspect is with them. And so they invited me. I was part of a similar exercise. If I remember, somewhere between 22nd to 23rd or 24th December at Alisa Hotel. And over there, equally, they assembled very resourceful people. And every sector of the economy, we had a team that was set to look at what we could do. Because Banredu, as a finance minister, had what he called Ghana at 100. Later, when NDC came, they threw the Ghana at 100 away. They did what they called Ghana at 40. Let me say that President Rawlings also had what he called Vision 2020. And then the NPP came, they changed it, Ghana Poverty Reduction Strategy, and later Banredu put together the Ghana we want when we are 100. When Banredu left the scene and the new people came, they brought what they called Ghana at 40. And later on, when the economy was plunged into serious crisis between 2014 and 2015. 2016, I should say, there was Senche, Royal Senche Economic Forum. Aside that, when the Akufo-Addo came, he also decided to go with what he named as Ghana Beyond Aid Agenda.
Right.
And my brother, this December when we met, they gave us all those documents. And if you pick one document after the other, you could see that the same issues were running through. You could hardly see any new issue. So I was except that they have different names. And they tasked us to pull all these issues together and then look at what recently happened in 2022 when the global economic turmoil hit us so much and everybody was suffering. How do we develop a resilient economy so that in future, God forbid, if anything happens to the global market, it wouldn't affect us so much? And how do we want Ghana to be when we are 100 years 2057. And so we sat down, and the economic committee was chaired by no other person than eminent emeritus professor and his AIT, former vice chancellor of the University of Ghana. I was a member of that committee. We met for 2 days at Alisa Hotel. We invited people of all walks of life. Indeed, the only politician I saw there was Professor Jambafo. It wasn't anything political. It was opening up the private sector,
and this was Doctor, this was commissioned. Doctor, I'm just a minute. Let me start. Okay.
So the document became ready somewhere in the middle of last year, and later they sent the document to the president. Unfortunately, because we were in the campaign mood and all that, the document had not been implemented. And so when a new government comes and another team has been put together to do the same thing that we did with taxpayers' money, I think I'm worried.
And this committee that you were part, this was put together by the MPP administration?
Yeah, so under the National Development Planning Commission, the person who was in charge of all this exercise was Dr. Mensa Abrampa. Unfortunately, few days after he submitted the report to the president, he died so painfully.
The recommendations that you came up with, is it different from what we have been told today?
In fact, the fiscal policies, monetary policies, taxes, all these things that you are talking about, they are all very, very clear. And you could see that these were the very conclusions that we made. And I had already told you that most of the development plans and the various economic workshops and all that we have had, if you go through all those documents, you don't see anything too different.
Okay.
The whole thing is that Ghana, most of what we consume, we eat, we import. We become an import-dependent economy.
Okay.
How do we industrialize our country? How do we establish more factories so that we create more jobs for the people and then cut import for us to be economically resilient?
Let me ask a final question that can allow the other guests to also come in. So, from what you are telling me, and because we just had 2 days of a national economic dialogue, you worked on a similar one last year, presented a report to President Akufo-Addo, and clearly implementation, obviously, is not something that we witness. Is it your understanding that perhaps we've had 2 days of something that could be described as a waste of time because the solutions are already available?
Yeah, so when they asked us to do this, they gave us all the previous documents. And as I said, apart from me, you could clearly see, there wasn't much differences. So they were almost the same. So that's number one. And then when we put them together, the meeting, the engagement took place, only 2 days at Lisa Hotel. But that was not the end of the story, because even around a year this time, we were still working on the report. And so we had to, based on what people have said and what we also know from the previous plans and the other things, they did quite other engagements before finally they put together the final report, submitted to the president, and it was never implemented. And the new president has come. I was thinking that they would rather engage at the cabinet level, or even they could engage few people to review this document, maybe invite those people who wrote this document to such a meeting, and then see, of course, they're also introducing 24-hour economy. We didn't know that was never captured.
Right.
Yeah, so all these things, yes, maybe now they want it to be included. But I don't think including such, a few other things is bad, and that would have, demanded that we have to organize another economic forum. But just that those things are becoming too frequent. We like planning, and yet when we plan and we get the documents so beautiful, that becomes the end of the day. The end of the story. And that has been my worry. And
thank you so much, Dr. Demfa. I'll come back to you. Let me bring in Professor Gachi, because he was one of the organizers of the just ended National Economic Forum. Prof, 2 days, will you describe us, how do you describe the last 2 days? You were neck deep in organizing this event, and perhaps you can have the opportunity to respond to Dr. Domfe. You are on, if you can unmute for me, Prof. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, please go on.
Yeah, very, very fruitful. The engagement was very responsive. Commitment was very high, and people were actually engaged in real business to see to it that they have solutions to resolve the problems of the country. And thank God, this was very transparent, open. Everybody knew what we were discussing, the problems that we identify, and the solutions that we prefer to those problems. And then the roadmap that we have charted for ourselves, and then the tax that we place on those who are managing affairs for us, the finance minister, National Development Planning Commission, the president, and the
so we are getting connection to Professor Gache is beginning to act up. We'll see if we can rectify it and have him back on. But whilst my technician work to have a clean line to
aware
yes,
that those
yes, please go on. We lost you briefly.
Can I?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, please go on.
I think what Dr. Domfe was talking about, I think should not be brought into the discussion. We have gone to do something that we announced to the nation. We have discussed it with the people of Ghana. We have set the date. We attended. We opened it up. Everybody knew what we were doing. So to be comparing this to something that the nation was not aware of, that you went to do, and that you believe that we should go and take what you have done. I think it's like a casting or downgrading the.
Again, we are having difficulties getting through to Professor Gache. We will see if we can rectify the connection to him. But let me bring in Professor Pepra from the United States of America. He's joining us from the Andrews University. Prof. Pepra, good afternoon and welcome. Good morning.
I think that past 2 days.
Okay. Again to you.
Hello?
Yes, Prof. Gachi. So Dr. Domfe's argument is that the outcome of their meeting, the document existed. The solution they provided is no different from what the two-day forum also provided. And for that reason, if you wanted to save time and resources, the government should have simply gone for the outcome of their deliberations and then see how best they can implement it.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello? Yeah, the point I'm making is that none of us is aware of, number one, the existence of such a dialogue.
Okay.
None of us is aware of the outcome of that meeting. So for you to all of a sudden trying to superimpose what you have done in secret, what you have submitted to the former president we are not aware of, that we should go and take that, that everything is the same. How do we even trust that what you are saying is true? So I think we should focus on what we have gone to do.
Of course.
The outcome that we came out with. If people want to criticize the outcome, they should be bold and criticize the outcome. But you can't tell me that we have gone to do the same thing when I don't know what you have done. You can't put it side by side. So those arguments, I don't think that we have. That's where we are now.
Okay.
What we have gotten to is we have come out to some kind of overview solutions, recommendations. No, the first question is the government ready to go by the recommendations? Yes. Such commitment have been given over and over. How do we ensure that when they do implement the solution or the recommendations, we track that they are doing it and is inuring to the benefit of the people of Ghana? I think that is critical.
All right, I'll come back.
I also believe that we have actually managed cost-effective dialogue. We didn't pay for accommodation. People came in and went back to their houses. We have used a state facility to do the 2-day program. So people should understand it in that context.
Right. I'll come back so we can deal with the recommendation. Let me bring in Professor Pepra from the Andrews University in the US of A. Good morning, Prof. So, I mean, Ghana will be 68 years old tomorrow. What is wrong with us that we are always doing talk shop? We have all the fine laws. We have all the recommendations to turn our economy around. In fact, on paper, Ghana should be working shoulders with the United States of America, the United Arab Emirates, and other developing economies. But here we are struggling to even provide the basic needs of our people, despite the availability of so many recommendations that we've had. At 68 years old, what really is our problem?
Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to my fellow panelists. Based on your question, at 68 years old, our problem has been with implementation. So that has been the major issue. How we go about the implementing these talk shop strategies that the discussion is ongoing is coming from the two divergent political parties we have in our country. And you could see that each of them comes with a different agenda. I listened to the session very well, and if we have been able to go with one plan, National Development Plan agenda, our country would have been far better than we see today. But it's not too late. 68 years, we're still together. The one other important thing that maybe, which is a plus to us, is the peace that we have endured at 68 years. Although economically, we don't see that peace being transformed in the lives of Ghanaians. But also, if we compare ourselves to our peers or our neighbors in Africa, our situation is better than others. So we should also give thanks to God and then some of our leaders that have been in existence.
Let's, I don't know, the recommendations that they came up with, which one do you think is achievable? And my focus really here is on the state-owned enterprises and why they are running down. The ECG came up forbidding from President Mahama, from the finance minister, from the energy minister. Among the recommendations suggested by some experts that spoke at the event was the effect that, for example, VRA, BoG assets must be sold. Some radical changes might happen at ECG. It looks like people are appointed to hear some of these SOAs, take huge salaries plus other benefits, but the work output is nothing to write home about. How best can we make our SOEs work? I know in the US, for example, Elon Musk is leading this government efficiency already. We've seen a lot of things happening within that circles. Is it about time we go that way?
So I think when we spoke yesterday, I talked about productive incentive, and I see that it's being captured well under the governance section. Which means that as the finance minister said, if he's going to make this his Bible, he may have to go and review the SOE's plan. And it's not only that. Yesterday, remember I mentioned about the people that we employ to go and manage these SOEs. We must look at their experience and the capabilities, whether they understand the business that they are going to really manage. Let me sum it up. So from the document they give is well written. The points are well laid out. So I'm going to give it out and tell me from my perspective what I see missing.
Right.
They were able to identify the issue of revenue generation and debt management. And then under debt management, the focus was on Cocoa Board and ECG as the SOE. Though we must admit that there are other SOEs that needs attention. Gayhawk and staff must also be looked at because all of them, as the finance minister said, but these two are the two elephants in the room that needs to be addressed.
Right.
And then under the issue of governance, I was hoping that the document would have captured our decentralization process, and then the district assemblies giving right to contract or contract, go into contract with other parties that to do certain things for the government or for in the districts that are not captured in the budget. That also brings some overlays or unplanned expenditures to the government. The last part that I was hoping to see that the document did not capture, because at the end of the day, the finance minister set the tone for two main things: one, debt, and two, unemployment. If you look at the document, there was nowhere that it talked about how this whole thing will help us to address the unemployment situation. Even it's not unemployment to employment was not even captured. That word did not even appear anywhere in the document. But if you listen to the president, he gave his assertion that the problem they are facing is debt and unemployment. 500,000 graduates coming out every year, already 2.5 million who are already in the unemployed. So we add on to it every year. So this document should have captured one aspect, saying that at the end of the day, we want to see all this triple down into reducing the unemployment situation. And so for me, I would have loved to see that unemployment captured, and then government decentralization and district assemblies, how the governance, because most of the corruption that we are talking about, if you read the Auditor General report, they are emanating from the district assemblies.
Right.
And the politicians will only see it when it's elevated to their level. There are a lot of things that happen there, and then when you bring it to it, it becomes a major issue. My last point is on they captured the foreign exchange. The word they used was the retention. However, the retention is not only the problem. The other problem with our foreign or currency transactions in Ghana is that there are a lot of people who are hoarding foreign currencies in the country. And we are also pricing items in the country in foreign currencies, which is making our city not being seen too well or not doing well in the light of our economy. Let me give you an example. I listened to the New Patriotic Party, the minority press conference on the economy. When they are making an argument and they want to talk about, we have done well, they quote the figure in dollars.
Exactly.
When they are doing an argument where they think that it will be against them, then they made the argument in cedi. So I asked myself, we are in a country called Ghana, our currency is cedis. So if we really want to understand our situation, we should convert whatever dollar value
we have
into a cedi. So we can compare like to like. But the moment you say, this one was in dollars, this one is in cedi, and we are listening, we get confused.
Okay.
So the attention should not be only on the retention, but if the government itself is going to be disciplined and say that from now onwards, all my contracts will be quoted in my currency. It's going to really help us. Then we know that, oh, we have the X contract, but the contract says this in our currency. The moment we say, oh, let's quote the dollar and use the prevailing exchange rate at the time, then it means that we are admitting that our economy, the cedi is no more to be used. We have dollarized our economy, and this is something that I was hoping that aside the retention, it should also be addressed in going forward, so that we know that everything we talked about is in cedi. I give an example: South Africa. All contracts, you go online, you see that all their contracts are presented in rands. They don't talk about prevailing exchange rate. The moment you bring prevailing exchange rate, it means that you are dollarizing your economy and or whatever currency you are using. And this is something that we really need to address. If you go to Parliament, we make a law. Anytime somebody is quoting a currency or an amount, it must be in our local currency, the cedi. We don't want to hear anything like dollar, cedi, euro, and it creates a confusion. When we are dealing with foreign partners, we can go in with the foreign currencies. But when we are talking about our economy, let's focus on our own currency. And I think it will really help us.
Right, Prof, thank you so much. I'll come back to you. The key issue you raised, the foreign exchange, unemployment, that for you did not feature in the recommendations that the forum came up with. Let me go back to Dr. Domfe because Professor Gachi was one of the organizers. I'll give him the final word to respond to you, and of course, Dr. Domfe. Dr. Domfe, for you, what are also the takeaways for you? Perhaps that's something we're expecting to come that it didn't come, and how do we ensure the implementation of this new document that the finance minister says will be his Bible going forward?
Yeah, thank you very much. Quickly, my friend from Gachi, it's very surprising to hear that he never heard about this document. Very, very surprising. Because the document, I've sent it to you. I don't know whether they've shared it. I've just seen it. Yeah. In fact, among other things, they invited 200 experts in policy formulation areas. And I'm saying that they didn't want to make it political, so the president was not invited there. It was only Professor Jambafo who came. And the Banks Association, Insurance Association, Ghana Traders Association, Ghana, all the recognized associations in this country, they brought their reps there, And so it's very surprising to hear that. He's very loud and he talks a lot about Ghana. And so it surprises me that, Prof, you never heard this. Yeah, but again, National Development Planning Commission, Akufo-Addo didn't take it away. It is there. So, and it is still the same commission that is going to advise the president on, in fact, what you are doing currently. You are doing it with them.
Right.
And so if you say that, you are not aware, or it may not even be true. It's very, very unfortunate.
All right. Yeah. So let's go to your takeaways.
I think the recommendations that they have made, I agree perfectly with almost everything that they have raised, except that maybe I have a few issues with some of them, because I think, as I said, what we presented to the president last year, you could see that most of what they have discussed are also there, maybe in a different form, but they are all covered. The number one thing that they talked about is where I have a little bit of challenge. That recommendation to ensure coordination between fiscal policy and monetary policy. In fact, to some extent, it will be good, but sometimes it can also be dangerous. Let me take, for example, when we say monetary policy, that is how Bank of Ghana controls growth, using their various policy instruments. And normally they use the policy rate. And so where inflation, for example, is increasing, and they want to now deal with the money supply, one of the tools they use is to increase policy rate.
Right.
We ought to remember policy rate hovered around 13.5 before 2022. But as soon as inflation at the beginning of the year 2022 was 13.6, at the end of the year it went to 54. Everybody was crying. And so in an attempt to address that problem, immediately monetary policy committee started increasing the policy rate. to discourage people from, taking credit, for credit to become so expensive. And when that happens, the aggregate demand will go down to, as it were, slow down increases in prices.
Right.
And so that is contractionary monetary policy. Now, when they were doing that, if you talk about coordination, then you are saying that the Ministry of Finance should also respond with contractionary fiscal policy measure. And how do they do that? They will do that by, number one, reducing expenditure, and number two, raising all taxes. And so if you are talking about coordination, if our Ministry of Finance does this and BoG also does a contractionary monetary policy, then it will be very effective in controlling prices. But the harmful thing about it is that in as much as the coordination is good, sometimes you also don't want the monetary policy and fiscal policy. You don't want the coordination, especially where the cabinet or the president is somebody who wants to do things to make people feel that. I'm not talking about this particular president. I'm just giving a scenario where the interest of the president is for people to know that he's doing well, but not really to push the economy to do better tomorrow. Maybe just for today, let's solve the problem today. And sometimes some of what you do today can affect what happens, tomorrow.
I need to bring in Dr. I need to bring in Prof. Gatti. Yes.
Sorry. Let's spend more when we don't have to spend.
Okay.
Let's cut taxes when we don't have to do that. And when that happens, it is expansionary fiscal policy. It's going to push prices up. When BoG sees this, because BoG is not directly under the president, they are more. They are more directly. They are always. They always have to go to Parliament. It's Parliament that are, as it were, if you look at the law, that has to control, the BoG. But for the finance minister, who controls the fiscal policy, is a member of the cabinet. The president directs him what to do every day. And therefore, sometimes when the BoG sees that the finance ministry is going where they have to apply contractionary fiscal policy, they are going expansionary, BoG can respond with if it is contractionary, they will go expansionary.
Okay.
Just to make sure things stay afloat.
I think I need to, at this stage.
They don't always have to coordinate.
At this stage, let me bring you Professor.
Always have to coordinate.
At this stage, let me bring you Professor Gatti to respond to. You've heard so much. Just give me a few seconds. Professor Gatti, so you've heard Professor Prepra from the Andrews University and of course Dr. Domfe. What will be your response to the concerns they've raised?
Well, I think to a large extent they are fair comment. The work of the private sector thematic area, the structural reforms, and even the macro thematic area, growth, all are supposed to be accounted for in terms of jobs. So it is not actually true that we didn't deal with job creation and job issues there. It was a centerpiece of the discussions. But I do agree with him that if we were to create another pillar that would project the job issue, that would have made it easier for people to be identified with. So that is a fair comment. Then again, coordination, we all do know that anytime sectors coordinate properly by keeping their independence, they tend to operate very well to the overall benefit of the economy. So that has been identified to be one of the ways going forward.
All right.
And the Bank of Ghana demonstrated that from two perspectives, coordinating with the fiscal authorities and also coordinating with the productive sectors. That is very important in terms of dealing with the issues of inflation.
Okay.
It is the duty of the central bank to ensure stability in terms of prices, including inflation. but certain measures that ought to be taken to deal with some of the issues relating to food inflation, for example, are not under the purview of the central bank. You can only achieve that if you are able to coordinate properly with the sectors that are connected to that mandate.
Right.
So I believe that coordination is good for the economy, and then we shall ensure that that goes through in the management of the economy.
So is the work of the committee over and now that the forum is over?
No. What we have presented are just the highlight. We are now meeting from Friday to put all the report together, and by the middle or getting to around 20th of this month, we should be done with a comprehensive report and present to the president.
Will it also be your work to monitor implementation of the key recommendations?
That has not been given to us, but it is very clear that part of the recommendation is influencing the budget, and part of the recommendation will be guiding the National Development Planning Commission to tailor its medium to long-term economic agenda for the economy. So those are very clear.
Right.
And then you also saw an interesting aspect of the program where we feature this, the economic sectors during the high-level dialogue, where the finance minister, the energy minister, trade, labor also came up. I think Prof. will also see that was the reason why we brought labor minister there, to also bring out the takeaways. So what the essence of that is that we want those ministers to identify with certain priority recommendations that they will take away to start working with, to ensure that the focus of the dialogue at the end of the day should be the implementation, because as indicated by my colleagues, that has been our problem. But now commitment is shown from the participants. Commitment is declared by the president and the vice president and the ministers. Now every citizen can watch. The things have been put into the public domain, and when we are implementing it, it will be seen. When we are not implementing it, it will also be seen. So the public and then the media has a way of now gauging whether the thing that we went to discuss and agree upon is what we are doing or not.
Thank you so much, Professor John Gachi. I can't go on any further. I would like to leave it here, but there's more to discuss on this matter. You heard Professor John Gachi. He's a member of the organizing committee of the just ended National Economic Forum. You also heard Dr. Dumfe and, of course, Professor Prepra from the Andrews University in the United States of America. We'll take a short break here on the pause and return with more. We're back on the show here. This is a pause. Now, a classroom replaced by tree shade. This is a new reality for people of Juanila DA Basic School. Now, following Joy News' feature, Cromlin started, which uncovered their collapsing death trap classroom. The Nanumba North Municipal Education Directorate has ordered lessons to be moved under trees. But this is a solution or just another failure of the system? First, here are excerpts from the story produced by Emmanuel Jibenu.
We have instructed that they house the primary 1 to 6 under trees for safety, and then for their lessons. Then for the KG, we are holding them in unused teachers' quarters for their lessons for now. And then we are also still appealing to the district assembly to immediately come to their aid. That is what we have done so far. Understand when it's raining.
For the children of Juan Nangele, these rains are more than just natural occurrence. It is a barrier to their education. This is Juan Nangele DA Basic School, a 3-unit smart block that has long passed its prime. It leans precariously with deep cracks threatening to collapse at any moment. Yet, this fragile structure is where the foundation of the education begins or ends. There is nobody in sight. and it appears there will be no school today. However, in my quest to satisfy my curiosity, I entered one of the classrooms. There, I met these siblings.
How are you?
I'm fine.
What's your name?
My name is Paul Bandelam.
Which class are you?
P4.
Who is that?
My name is Pico Pampa.
Okay, how are you?
Yeah, friend, thank you, sir.
Joseph and Pigri braved the rain, arriving drenched, hoping school day will still begin. Pigri, the youngest, is visibly shivering from the cold weather. Her brother could not look on, so he removed his wet shirt to cover his sister in an attempt to provide her with some warmth. The absence of teachers and students leaves the classrooms to the animals. With no doors or windows, the school serves as a refuge for livestock instead of children. I'm curious to know how classes are held here when it rains. Unfortunately, the head teacher is miles away, sheltering from the rain like everyone else. So I decided to reach him on phone. He paints a grimmer picture of what learning in this structure looks like.
Okay, am I talking to the head teacher?
Yes.
Okay. We are in your school. Will you be coming to school today?
It is still raining.
I want to know the challenges in your school.
Okay, we have a lot of challenge. I'm talking about the building, the school building. It has a big cracks. And actually it's more or less a depth track. Because of that, what we do is that when they break like this, we convey the furniture out to the distance, to the mango trees, so that it is the mango trees that we always have our classes for the sake of this thing, to save the children's life.
Well, let's get a quick reaction, and then joining us is the Regional Director of Education, Ali Adolf John. Ms. Adolf, good afternoon and welcome to the poll. So what has it been done to resolve this matter, this very disturbing learning conditions there? And if you can unmute for me, sir. Yes. We're trying to get the attention of Mr. Ali, John Ali Adolf. Yes, so if you can hear me, I was asking about what has been done to resolve the disturbing scenes we just played to our viewers.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go on.
No, this is not the Regional Education Director. This is an Anumba North Municipal Director of Education.
Okay, my apologies. So what has been done to address the issue?
The name is Patrice Sicho Komla Egbadewe.
Yes, thank you so much for the correction. So I was asking about what has been done to resolve this matter.
For now, we are keeping the people under free for their lessons. And then we are also in touch with the municipal assembly. In fact, today I made a follow-up visit to the school with the municipal assembly's engineer in the team. We are in touch with the municipal assembly to provide some kind of emergent intervention, because very soon the rains will set in. So that is what we are doing so far.
So, I mean, the scenes that we witness in the classroom, and now the alternative is to move them to study under trees. Will this help come on time so that, you know, the rainy season, when it comes, they will have a shelter to learn under?
Yes. It is our prayer it comes in time. We would like to use your medium as well to appeal to philanthropists, people with goodwill, to quickly give us some intervention. Otherwise, these little ones will be at the verge of losing their educational dreams. Please, anybody who is watching, let's come to our aid. We are on our knees.
Well, and the hope is that help will come so that the children can have a very conducive environment to study in. Thank you so much. We'll come to when there's any update on this matter. All right, so we'll leave it here for now, and then we'll come back. So tomorrow, Ghana will be 68 years old, and as usual, we'll have the national parade across the country. The national one we held at the Jubilee House, where President Mahama is expected to receive the salute from security agencies. So what really, how are preparations going ahead of the event tomorrow? We'll see if we can get the Deputy Director of Government Communications at the Jubilee House, Shamima Muslim, to tell us how preparations are ongoing ahead of the 68th Independence Parade taking place at the Jubilee House. And the reason is that government want to cut down costs associated with the national celebration. But there will be regional events, district events also across the country for that. And the day is tomorrow, 68th Independence celebration of the country. Well, I guess we'll have to leave it here. That will be our show. All right, so let me just pick some few words from Shamima Muslim, is Deputy Director, Government Communications at the Jubilee House. Shamima, is everything set for tomorrow at the Jubilee House?
Yes, indeed. Everything is set. Good afternoon to you. All is set for tomorrow's very scaled down celebration. Still very significant celebration of our 68th Independence anniversary.
The compound of the Jubilee House compared to the Independence Square or the Blast House Square is small. Does it mean that we may not have the large numbers that we always witness at the national event, military, police, other security agencies, together with school children and other, identifiable groups? What client shape will tomorrow's event take place?
Yes, it was because one, we wanted to manage the numbers and also save some costs, given the exigencies of the current economic situation. It was also just to take a second look at the model we've used over the years, where loads of school children will stand at the response stand for quite a number of hours. So this year is also to give us some space to really look at the entire, model of the independence commemoration and figure out how we should proceed with the celebrations into the next year, but also most importantly, planning towards Ghana's 70th independence anniversary, which will come, God willing, in 2 years' time. So yes, as you would expect, the numbers would really be smaller to be just a minute reflection of our diversity as a nation. But the entire event we covered live. It will be on multiple media platforms. It will stream live across many online platforms as well. So the entire nation can get to be part of the program. But just the significance of getting the citizens closer to the presidency and opening up the presidency at a time that we are calling for, citizen participation in trying to revitalize our economy and reset our country. So it's just that significance of this particular year that allows for us to scale it down in this way.
And I know for sure that the school children will be a bit disappointed. I can cite myself an example. I mean, I took part in the parade all the way from class 4 all the way to JSL 3 and even at the secondary school level. And I can tell you that the night before, you would never sleep. You won't have any sleep because you are so enthusiastic ahead of the day. But I mean, we've lost her. So tomorrow, all of us will celebrate Ghana at 68. The national event will take place at the Jubilee House. There will be regional and district events across the country. But that's our show for today. For more stories, log on to our website, myjoyonline.com. New BoG building, $230 million paid to contractor, $31.8 million outstanding. Dr. Asiama, that's the governor of the Central Bank. Whatever you are up to in the hours ahead, I hope it's profitable. My name is Elton Broby. Have a good evening and take care.